With free practice one officially over for the 2022 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, we have Ferrari's Charles Leclerc finishing with the fastest time, followed by Red Bull's Max Verstappen, and third is Alfa Romeo's Valtteri Bottas. And just to talk briefly about Valtteri, a lot of fans thought coming into this season Valtteri was going to be well off the pace in that Alfa Romeo, and none of us really knew what the Alfa Romeo was going to be capable of as far as their pace this year. But I never had doubts that Valtteri was going to find himself still finishing near the top, whether it's free practice, whether it's qualifying, whether it's race. I always thought that Valtteri was still going to be competitive. He clearly doesn't have to live under the shadow of Lewis Hamilton anymore, and that's really why I think Valtteri's been scrutinized so much. It's very easy to say a driver isn't good when you're comparing him to a seven-time world champion in Lewis Hamilton. I always figured that Valtteri moving to Alfa Romeo would release so much pressure off of his shoulders. The fact that he is now the number one driver on that team, he doesn't have to take team orders like he was at Mercedes. It's not a surprise to really see him doing well, and I'm glad that he is. As far as everything else that happened here today, we did have a red flag session. I think Lando Norris brushed up against the wall. A little bit of the braking boards came out onto the track. It was nothing significant. Red flag session lasted about 10 or 15 minutes, and most of the cars went back out. Kevin Magnussen did encounter a hydraulics issue, and I believe Haas will try to get that fixed for him for free practice 2 and free practice 3 this weekend. A lot of the cars still seem to be having the porpoising issue, especially on this high-speed street circuit. There was a lot of dust on the track as well. A lot of these high-speed corners, obviously a lot of cars are going to want to run more downforce. I would say George Russell looked like he had the biggest issue still with the porpoising. His head was bouncing a lot when they would show us, his POV. So Mercedes still have their work cut out. Clearly, they still have to try to address that issue, as do the other teams. Aston Martin still doesn't look good. I think they're going to have a very, very long, stressful season. The McLarens didn't look terrible, but then again, the McLarens looked much better during the practice sessions last week in Bahrain, and they had absolutely no race pace at all when it came to the actual race. So, of course, this is free practice. We have to really take all of these things with a pinch of salt, but just to kind of have an idea maybe of what teams are at least dealing with going into the race weekend, excuse me, if I could speak correctly. I think that's the major thing to pay attention to in free practice. And I'm looking at other cars on the timesheets. For the most part, the Red Bulls, I think, looked the most consistent, with both Sergio and Max obviously doing very well, and then Yuki Tsunoda and Pierre Gasly as well. And the AlphaTauris also had pretty strong running. So I definitely expect Max Verstappen to be competing for the win here this Sunday. The question is, will that reliability issue truly be solved? Because that has to be weighing on everybody's minds now. I'm sure Red Bull have addressed the issue. And of course, going through a full race simulation, they'll need to make sure that everything is where it needs to be. That way they can actually get through that race and get those points, because people don't understand the gravity of not having any points at all. 2 DNFs for the first race weekend. That's a big blow, and especially with the Ferraris looking so strong, I still believe the Red Bulls are going to have a lot of catching up to do. Not as much clearly as the Mercedes. I mean, the Mercedes, if they're not careful and if they don't get their issues resolved, could find themselves battling in the midfield. But I think without a shadow of a doubt, Ferraris right now consistently seem to be at least the fastest car from obviously all the testing sessions to the Bahrain race weekend. I think the Red Bulls are very, very close there in second. If they get that reliability fixed, the fight is on, and I believe it will be. And I think the Mercedes are clearly the third best car on the grid. I don't think any of the other teams are faster than the Mercedes at the point, but that could change. I mean, Haas's, they look great. Kevin Magnussen, what an absolute machine he's turned into, and I'm going to keep referring to him as that because he has been absolutely on a tear here with his return back to Formula One. So I expect if the Haas's have no issues, I expect K-Mag to be competing in the top 10, maybe even a little bit higher up than that for another points finish this weekend. It will be awesome to see Mick in that fight as well. For Haas to get double points out of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix weekend, that would be absolutely fantastic. I also expect the Alfa Romeos to look pretty good. Zhou Guan Yu, I think, is really surprising some people. I think everybody thought he was just kind of going to be towards, the back markers, but he's clearly shown that he's very comfortable in these Formula One cars. And of course, I talked about Valtteri earlier. So I fully expect the Alphas and Haas to again have a solid, great race weekend, barring obviously any reliability issues. So I think that's all that there really is to cover here for free practice one. Again, we have to take these things with a pinch of salt as far as the times are concerned, but you're really looking at reliability. You're looking at what teams are trying to test out, what teams are trying to maybe develop and tweak to their cars. That way, when we get to the qualifying sessions, everybody has all their packages together as far as what they need, and they can obviously put the best times on track. I think this is going to be a very important race for the second race in the season. Remember, we were racing, I think, 8 months later on this circuit in the 2021 season. So I think that is going to be different. We'll see how the temperature may affect the tires as well. So let me know your thoughts in regards to free practice one. I probably won't be covering free practice two or free practice three. I'll be back with qualifying, and I'll be, of course, uploading a lot of content based off of what happens with qualifying. If you're new, make sure to subscribe here to the channel for weekly Formula One content. I do cover every race weekend. I'm still very new to this. I've never in my life covered Formula One in a public setting as far as YouTube is concerned. So I'm still kind of getting used to talking on camera and being comfortable talking on camera. I'm used to just talking about Formula One, obviously with my friends. It's much different than actually having to think about what you're saying and put it into a YouTube video. But hopefully you guys give me some time as I continue to develop and continue to improve as a content creator here in the Formula One universe. I'll be back with qualifying tomorrow. Appreciate your love and support. Until next time, Racing Chemicals signing out. Hope you have a great and fantastic day. I will see you later, and goodbye.